Well, thank you very much. And we're going to continue with a panel about the circular economy, which is something I think we hear all the time, but it's not quite clear what it means and the potential for it. And that's why I'm very excited about this panel and the panelists that we're going to be debating with. And I'm joined by Emilio Braghi, who is president for Novelis Europe. I'm also joined by Javier Posada, who is the chief sustainable officer for Inditex. Jean-Marc, who is CEO for Accenture in their operations in the EMEA. And Gwenaelle Avice-Huet, who is Executive Vice President for Europe Operations at Schneider Electrics. Now, the reason why I'm very, very excited, in fact, we were talking about this before we got on stage, is that you represent so many different industries here. So when I say to you, what does circular economy mean? What does it mean? And how does it apply to your different companies? Emilio?
Well, I think there are differences, but a lot of commonalities. We were talking with Javier from Inditex before, and fashion industry and light metals have a lot of common challenges and opportunities as well. Novelis is the largest producer of aluminum flat roll product, but also the largest recycler of aluminum. We are supplying many different industries from beverage can to automotive, aerospace, and building and construction. Back in 2011, we developed a complete new strategy, fixing a very ambitious target, I would say an aspirational target of 80% recycled content for our product. And at that time, we were in the range of the low 20%. Right now, we are at 61%. We're by far the leading producer, and aluminum is definitely a perfect fit for the circular economy. It can be recycled infinitely without losing any property. So you can produce basically every kind of product from end of life or pre-consumer scrap. That's the beauty of this material, but it was not easy. It was a long path. We still need to work a lot in order to convince our customers, all the stakeholders in the process, to move towards an even more ambitious target in terms of recycled content.
Well, thank you for that. And I have a follow-up question, but I will ask you later, because you said something that I thought was very interesting, in fact. Javier, of course, Inditex is the parent company of brands like Zara, Massimo Dutti. I'm sure many of us wear it. I know I am today. And you are a company that at the beginning some said it is fast fashion. It creates a lot of fashion very quickly and displays it. How does that fit, however, with circular economy? Is it compatible?
Well, first of all, thank you, Maria. Thank you for your introduction, and thank you for allowing us to be here. Yes, a brief summary maybe before we enter into details about the company. As you mentioned, we are a fashion group composed of 7 different brands focused on providing a unique fashion proposal to our clients. And it is one of the engines of our business model. The fashion proposal built on the creativity, emotion, innovation, and quality, but mostly based on answering the needs of our clients in a very concrete and fast way. And the second engine of that model is the shopping experience, the increasingly engaging shopping experience, which is the second engine of our model. No matter if you shop online or shop on our unique prime locations in whatever city around the world, you have that integrating experience, both, seamless online and offline. Third, our team is the third engine of our business model, and fourth, sustainability. And sustainability for us encompasses the whole business model. It's absolutely embedded in our business model. We've been working on sustainability for 20 years, but particularly since 2019, we have been increasing the pace in our sustainability pace. And we are creating a business model to provide our clients with circular fashion, circular based on extending the life of our garments, providing different services as we have done with our new platform for circularity, which is our pre-owned project. You know that we have committed by this mid-year in our shareholders meeting to extend that business model to all our key markets. We have now presence in Germany and in France and UK, and we have committed to be in all our key markets by 2025. And this includes extending the life through the repair, the donation, or the resold of used garments. But it also encompasses the use of more sustainable raw materials. And I will get later on probably on the details. But these are the pillars of the strategy we have around circularity and around our business model.
That's also the platform that you said you launched in France. It's interesting that you decided to also do it here, but you plan or at least hope to extend it globally.
Yep.
And Jean-Marc, so when clients, let's say, also approach and say, what is circular economy? How could I incorporate this? How would you yourself define it?
Yes, I think it's a very good question because there is a lot of myth on probably lack of clarity on this concept. I remember 3 years ago we wrote a book on it just to put circular economy at a pretty high agenda, especially in Europe, where I think we have a massive opportunity to leverage this to build a much more sustainable economy. So the book, there was 3 ideas that I think summarize a bit what we put behind circular economy. First idea is the economy has been based on the linear model for many years. It was all about taking out of the ground, manufacturing stuff, and generating waste. This has been the basis of our economy for many years. We know that by 2030, by 2050, there is not enough resources, natural resources especially, in order to afford the growth of the economy. We're going to need 3 planets by 2050 if we doesn't change the model. So the concept really came from that idea that the current linear model will have to evolve if we want to have a prosperous growth in the future. That's where the concept of circular economy really starts with. Now, the second simple idea is that circular economy is not about just recycling. Even though recycling is a very important part of it. On the previous panel, and I'm sure we're going to talk about how the metal industry, frankly, invents recycling in a very successful way. And hopefully that is a good thing, and that will continue depending on affordability, depending on the cost of energy, depending on the CO2 emission, we're going to get more or less good. But recycling will be an integral part. But beyond metal, there are a lot of other complexity, whether you are talking about packaging or plastic and other things like that. So recycling is one of the models, but it's not going to solve the whole thing. I think where it's getting really interesting is that circular economy is also about new business model. It's all about product extension, product life cycle management, because there is a lot of waste of usage of product. There's many products that are not very well used. And we can develop new business model in order to them. There is a lot of business model also around sharing, around reselling. And this is where you get most of the value, we believe, of the circular economy. And this is where it's a great opportunity for us in Europe to lead, because we don't have a lot of raw material in Europe, not a lot of resources. And I think this is where it's really interesting. The good thing is, out of this book, we apply it to ourselves. We are a big company. We have more than 750,000 people. We have a lot of technology waste. We are using a lot of energy in my company. So we have taken commitment to apply it to us, which is by 2025, we're going to be fully powered by renewable energy. But we're going to be also fully committed to completely recycle our e-waste. And there is a big industry today on high-tech around how you can recycle waste of PCs, of mobile phone, in order to be sure that this new industry is also set up for success on the recycling side. And we contribute to this at Accenture, and we have taken a strong commitment to get there as well. So those concepts are not just something that we may see happening in the next decade. It's something that we are already doing.
And I think it's very interesting, too, that you say a lot of people think the circular economy is just recycling products, when in fact you can go from, the materials that you need to the entire supply chain, which we're going to talk about now, to even how you end that product, because ultimately everything comes to an end with any product. But all of that comes together. So it's interesting that it goes beyond recycling. It's important, but it's a part of it just.
Look, the most famous example that everybody mentioned, I was talking to a car industry manufacturer, is just the car. Everybody has a car. The car is not used 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. And when the car is used, it's with an average of 1.1 passenger. So imagine a platform, and we have some experience of that already, where you share the usage of the car. And if the electrical car is more on the usage of sharing, you completely change the industry, but also the asset utilization. And you are becoming even more circular in the way you operate. This is what I mean with new business model, which I think has an unlimited potential that we need to just think about.
Well, and we're going to continue in a little bit on that. Gwenaelle, now the final, I guess, definition for it at Schneider Electric, how do you look at circular economy? How do you apply it? But also, how do you even define it in terms of your industry?
Yes, thank you very much. So just in few words, Schneider Electric is a company that is very much focused on products for electricity and for automation. And therefore, there is a legitimate question about our impact because we consume a lot of raw materials. And therefore, what's the impact in terms of extraction? And what's the impact in terms of reuse? So basically, our mission regarding circularity is to look at our company in a way that we want to decouple the growth of the company and the consumption of raw materials. So to grow faster in terms of sales of our products, but to reduce our consumption of raw materials. That sounds easy, but it's end to end. It's looking, across the board from the raw materials that we consume until the take back that we can have and then reusing the materials that we have in our products. So I would summarize circularity as it means today in our portfolio, 3 simple elements. Better use. Make sure that everything that is being developed is under the concept of eco-design, which is eco-friendly design of the products. So one element, use better. The second element is use again, reuse our product. So use better, use again, and use longer. And this is counterintuitive. Because most of the time when we sell something, we want it to last longer. In reality, for us, it's not only the concept, it's just making sure that we have the right maintenance in place, the right repairing in place, so the life extension is even longer than anticipated. So I would summarize circularity around those 3 categories of activities. Use better, use longer, and use again.
Well, thank you for it. And this is the first round of questions. Now we get perhaps into more the detailed questions. Emilio, before you talked about aluminum, you mentioned, of course, there's all kinds of raw materials. And I don't want to get you to talk about the politics of the world. But, there's a lot of now debate around the supply chain and securing that supply chain. It is obvious that it's become more political and more aggressive to some extent over the past 2 years. Is there any way that the circular economy could actually help maintain a level of autonomy?
I think it's absolutely essential for that. Let me explain a bit and giving some examples. So in Europe, many years ago, there was a magnesium industry which was flourishing. Magnesium is an element which is going into different application, alloying element for aluminum, but also in automotive application. Right now in Europe, basically the magnesium industry is not existing anymore. More than 95% of magnesium is imported from China. And guess what? 2 years ago, there was a crisis in China related to the energy consumption having some peaks. They decided to curtail the magnesium export. Price of magnesium was jumping up from less than $3,000 per ton to more than $13,000 per ton. And it was not even available. Even if you were paying that amount of money, which was huge, it was not available. So back to your question. And we can see something similar in the primary aluminum production in Europe. It has been curtailed because of the high electricity cost. We have lost more than 70% of our production over the past 20 years. And it's going to fall even longer. Recycling is definitely a good solution, and being circular allows Europe not only to be raw material independent, but also to develop a solution which is cost competitive, which is also allowing us to create a competitive advantage. The technology for recycling, the machinery, the equipment are mostly developed in Europe. We have a huge opportunity as a region to push for recycling and circularity. Just one comment, reuse is very important, no doubt about that. We need to look at the whole life cycle assessment. When we're talking about beverage, food packaging, the reuse can be even more dangerous than recycling. Why that? Because you need water to clean. And the consumption of water is as much important as trying to protect from the raw material dependency that we have outside of Europe.
And can I just ask you very briefly, because I'm based in Brussels, so of course we're always in almost the zeitgeist of the policymakers and the Commission and so on. And it is true that in the past, 2 years, especially in the past year, there has been a realization that there's a number of elements where there are big deficiencies in terms of the supply that's available and how quickly even Europe could turn that around, even if paying a lot of money. Are you encouraged by the new tone, perhaps, from authorities? There's been a wake-up call?
I mean, I'm in Brussels very frequently. I was there a couple of weeks ago. I met 5 commissioners of the European Commission, mostly on the theme of circularity and sustainability. There is definitely big opening, good understanding that this can become a key competitive advantage for our economy in Europe. The translation from that mindset into real action and incentives for the European industry to move forward is still something which is unresolved. And the problem we have at the end is that we have a sort of economic union, we don't have a political union. So many regulations are then demanded to the local countries, and there are a lot of different views on many topics still.
Of course, if you have anything you want to add on this particular point, feel free to. Otherwise, we go back to Javier, because you also talked about the materials that you use, how this is part of the ethos, to some extent, of the company. Would you say, and this is not an opinion, it's objective, you're the most successful fashion retailer in the world. Is this something now that you can't separate from your product because your clients want it, because you want to also have it closely connected to your product? Has it become almost part of the identity of your product? Even if you're in fashion, you have to go into the way of circular, sustainable, and your clients also demand it?
Yeah, clearly, I mean, sustainability has to be a feature of the product. I mean, and is more and more be demanded by our clients. But we have also to make work of teaching and making our clients aware of the impacts of our products, which is something not so easy to do. As we were mentioning, we have to speak about details on LCA and so, not so easy to make people aware. But I think the challenge is if we adopt it, if we include it in our fibers plans, and this is one of the pillars of our strategy when it comes to sustainability, which is moving from the use of virgin raw materials to the use of only recycled raw materials. That's the reason why we made that commitment that by 2030, all our raw materials will come for less impact raw materials. I mean, either 40% estimated to be coming from conventional recycled raw materials, or 25% coming from organic or regenerative agriculture for natural fibers, or very important next-gen raw materials, which is something of the pillars and some of the challenges of the industry, because we are speaking about raw materials that they do not exist, at least at the scale at the present moment. So there's a huge role on innovation there that has to happen, and I think there is a role we have to play, supporting that innovation to make it happen. And when we say support innovation, what does it mean? Of course, I mean, capital, I mean, going to helping supporting financially these new startups or innovations, as we made with CERC, an innovative company. We got into capital for blending of polycottons, but it's also committing to creating the market. I mean, if we say we are going to buy 25% of our raw materials by 2030, or if we make an off-take agreement with polyester new fiber like we have made with Admercycle or with Infinity Fiber for viscose, so we are making two things: creating market for the startups that opens new options for their future, and sending a strong message for the community about innovation. Here is the fashion industry, which is open to invest and which is open to buy these new raw materials. And the third ways of supporting that is not less, is doing it through the way of knowledge. I mean, when we get that innovative raw materials, it's not necessarily something that comply with the use of the fashion qualities. It's clearly a new polyester, but to become that polyester on a beautiful fashion garment, it takes a lot of textile engineering happening. This is something that we as brands can do through our own knowledge and the knowledge of our supply chain. This is a key element.
And what you say just briefly, it's important, of course, because the logic in the market is that if Inditex does it and creates its market, then others will follow because they say, well, my competitor is doing it. I can't look like I'm a company of a past century, basically.
Definitely. And we think we have a responsibility in that way of becoming agents of change. We are aware of our size, and we know that if we move in that direction with determination, we could be an agent of change and move the whole industry.
And maybe make the life of your competitors a bit more difficult then in that respect, but maybe that's for another day. Jean-Marc, he mentioned innovation. And in this world, of course, there's a question of how innovation can improve circular economy. There's also the question that perhaps as it stands, circular economy continues to be a little bit more difficult, perhaps more expensive, more difficult to apply. How important do you think this is? Because we've heard it already twice, the idea of explaining the kind of innovation behind it, but also changing the mindset of the consumer to teaching them in a way how to extend this course.
Yes, when I look at it as I say, for me, it's really a new economy. So it's new business model, it's new way of thinking, new way of buying, of producing. And when I look at a bit where we are today, I look at it more on the recycled part versus the new business model part. On the recycled part, I think the success that the metal industry has been driven, which is very significant, frankly, there are more progress to be done on other things. When I look at packaging, when I look at plastic, when I look at even waste, municipal waste, in Europe, we are below 50%. So we are making progress, but we still need a lot of innovations to be in an affordable way in terms of price of energy, price of labor, in terms of CO2, to have the right combination that we believe we can have more recycling material available in the future. We are not yet there. I think the metal success, which has been something that leads the way, we need still a lot of innovation on some of the recycling. And that's important. There is a lot of research. There is a lot of great companies, even here in France, I'm sure in Canada, in many parts of the world, that are continuing to innovate, because we're going to need more. In the spirit that there is not going to be enough raw material and stuff available in the future. So that's something that we are watching. Progress has been made. The price of energy doesn't always help, especially for plastics. There are some recycling stuff which are very dependent on price of energy. So that's one side of the equation which will need still some further work. The other side of the equation, I think, is really where many of us are pushing to say, it's not because it's a recycled product that consumer will buy it. Is buying a car which is fully recycled a better way to buy a car? So we need to look at the demand side. It's a bit like on energy transition. We have that debate here last year. Is it supply or is it? It's both. You need to have the supply for energy transition, but you need also consumer to use this new energy. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So on the demand side, I think there is a lot of work to be done. And I think here that's where we see more innovation right now, because we need to find proper business model. So business model for product reuse, how do you incentivize people to buy products that can be reused, repaired, remanufactured? Because there is an opportunity for business, but also for consumer in order to do that. All those sharing platforms we are saying, very much a lot of them enabled by digital technology. This is important because it's a way to optimize the usage of assets. I take the example of the car because that's but there is a lot of other assets that can be reused, shared among different ecosystem partners, and that's good things to do. But that's also something that you have to maybe in your industry, we're going to do a bit more resell in the future. I don't know, but resell is also a new business model we see emerging, and it's part of those new way. What I'm thinking here is that, and that's where I think innovation is really key, is how much innovation we can put to generate business model that attract consumer with the proper business case, value proposition. Because we need that side as well. If we have the great recycled products, the best of the best, but there is no buyer because they don't want necessarily to pay the premium, because that's the point you mentioned. There's sometimes going to be, for certain part, there's going to be a premium. For other part, there will be maybe a discount. And you need multiple parts of that to create a proper economy. Some clients may accept to pay a premium, but many others will go more for product sharing or reselling type of thing because they benefit from a discount. And you need both to make the equilibrium, because not all clients will be ready to pay more. In fact, we look at it in the current environment. We have made survey for consumer before COVID, during COVID, and just now. Even if sustainability is still high, they are very focused on inflation, on price increase right now, a bit more than sustainability. So you better have a good story to tell, because if you just say it's a super product, which is fully recycled, but it's more expensive, well, it's not going to be that easy for all your different customers right now. Some will pay the premium, but you better have also business model for the ones that are not ready to pay the premium, even though they want to participate to this circular economy. So this is really complex thing, and I think my worry, because I have seen the movie on energy transition, energy transition at some point in time was just a debate on energy mix. This was not the right debate. It is just half of the debate. And I think on circular economy, we have the risk to have the same debate. Let's produce more recycling stuff. Yes, but how do you sell it to the consumer? It's very important as well to create the demand side. And I think I'm very encouraged by all the innovation we see. I'm very encouraged, but we are still at the beginning of the wave. The big wave is still ahead of us, and it's great to have leading edge company like we have here on this table, because that's the way to set the tone for the whole economy.
And I'm happy you mentioned that. I was going to bring it later because I thought let's leave the maybe not so good parts at the end of what can be improved. But you mentioned what is in every study comes up with clients, customers, even other companies that may want to engage in this, that say, I want to do it, but only if the premium is right for me. If it's not, I may not be in a position to do it. And again, this goes back again to the idea of explaining well what you're doing, because even if I'm a consumer and they tell me sustainable, I don't really understand why. Why should I pay, 15% extra?
Especially today, where you already have to pay more because of inflation, not because of sustainability. So that debate today, especially in Europe, but frankly all over the world, has a bit changed with inflation, because inflation is becoming a very big topic.
So if you were to say, where's the balance in this? Is it more, I want to be sustainable but not pay that much, or I'm willing to pay the premium? Do you think it has changed the needle?
The right business model is that you need to be able to sell whatever the market environment. So you need to be able to segment your customer, know the one that wants to pay a premium, know the one that do not want to pay a premium, but still participating through the business model, like sharing, like reselling. You can offer a discount while being more sustainable. That's a good thing. And some clients will say, I'm ready to pay a premium because I want to contribute in a certain way to this new economy. That's something you should be able today, whatever the market environment. Because if the market is good, you sell. If the market is not good, you don't sell. Well, that's not a sustainable model for the circular economy we are looking for. You need to work hard on your business model, your pricing, your customer segmentation, to be sure that you have enough stuff to serve a market that is a bit more complex market right now. I think what's happened in the last year or two, is a bit of a change in the consumer-driven approach right now.
And Gwenaelle, Jean-Marc just made a very good point, which is with the circular economy, by definition, you don't want it to be up and down. You want it to be sustained over time. It's a very difficult question that I'm going to ask you, but I want to put you on the spot. How do you prevent that? Because I think that's the whole point. Circular, you want it to become entrenched in how things happen. How do you stop this from being an up and down, and now it's good to do it, and then it falls out of fashion? How do you see that becoming more structural?
Well, I think it should be part of a company's whole culture and mindset. So in our company, in Schneider, we have invested in use better, the first pillar of the circular economy, in 2008. So it's not brand new. At that time, we wanted to have something simple, visible for customers. So we have developed a green premium, way to put on the design of our product, so green premium label. And this objective of this label was to have transparency, trust, and performance of our products very easy to read for our clients. Today, 80% of our products have the green premium label. I just want to give you this example because it shows that it's not small. It's not just a side of the rest, it's really embedded within the company because we invested in 2008 launching this new label. Why it matters? Because trust, it's being ahead of regulation. So for the customers, they can, with this label, be sure that across geographies, this is ahead of regulation. Second, it's to make sure that there is transparency. Attached to that, they have the environmental footprint of the products that we sell, so they can use that, certification and things like that. And lastly, it's performance. How do we perform versus the rest of the market in terms of environmental footprint? So this label, again, with long-time persuasion, positioning of the brand, that is really echoed circularity, now it's taking off, it's 80% of our products. But it's not enough. So that's why we're saying use better, it's good, but it's also use longer, making sure that our products are even used longer than the initial lifetime. And this is for me one important topic. It's turning CapEx to OpEx, making sure that when people, they invest into one product, it's once in a time. And then through a service agreement, we will be there to repair, to maintain without changing everything. So it's saving CapEx. It's a way to save CapEx. So in an inflation environment, those OpEx through service agreement is even, more efficient. So that's why we have developed this EcoFit, EcoCare, kind of offer. So at the end of the day, for the customer, it's a way to save OpEx. So this is the second pillar, use longer. And the biggest order, you're absolutely right, is reuse, use again, the third pillar. So here we have launched a certification, meaning circular certification. It's just starting. But between last year and this year, we have double the number of commercial references that we offer to the market, double in a single year. Why? Because same as what we did for Green Premium, we want to position the company in that way because we believe that it will have a premium for our own company because over time this will impose into the market.
And you mentioned, can I just ask you very briefly, you mentioned the labels and how I'm sure you have studies that show your clients now look at it and understand it way more. You mentioned the EcoCare, the EcoFit, but this means basically change in the way that people buy. It's almost a huge cultural change. So I think the question for you would be, do you notice this is almost a generational thing that's changing? Is it by age bracket or is it societally entirely? And do you worry that at times, because the climate agenda, this is a controversial point, but because the climate agenda becomes a little bit politicized, it also gets reflected on that? Or would you say overall you notice that consumers want that?
Well, it's a good question. I would differentiate again the topics. I would say labels are very easy to communicate on the market because this is visible, this is transparent, they know what's behind. So it's not only a question. I think it's well established. The biggest question that we have is the change management for, we are over consuming. This is the reality. We are over-consuming. So how to impose in a market something that instead of over-consuming, just consuming what you have and just replacing one small part of what you have. This is what we are doing. For example, we have many clients, they have edges, some equipments that are coming at a certain age. The first reaction, change the equipment. It's not working anymore. It's at the end life. And our persuasion is that through EcoFit, through EcoCare, we can change just the core. Just the core. Huge reduction in terms of CO2. Between 20 to 35% reduction CO2 saving. But again, we have to showcase that this kind of, mentality should be now much more developed. And that's by examples. Just the kind of example with service agreement where we repair, where we maintain instead of changing everything.
Because the mentality was special with electronics. If it doesn't work, then buy a new one. That was for a very long time, I wonder. And Emilio, for you specifically, because I think for a lot of people, when they think of certain products industries, it's easy to see how you apply technology into the product. But I wonder, in an industry like yours, how do you go from this kind of theoretical approach to applying it in real life? How have you applied it at Novelis?
Related to recycling specifically?
Yeah.
Well, the recycling industry has been developing fast over the past 5-10 years, and it's still in motion. So we see new technologies coming in, especially when we're talking about sorting and selecting the kind of scrap that we are receiving, especially at the end of use. Technologies are in continuous development. So you have laser-based technology, X-rays, artificial intelligence, which are stepping in order to get this sorting more efficient. So it's an interesting period. This one I was mentioning before. There are European players which are definitely at the forefront of innovation, especially on the sorting technology for scrap. And we are continuously monitoring that. We're partnering with this industry. We're partnering with companies that are also taking care of collecting the end-of-life scrap, sorting it, segregating, and giving us a scrap quality which is acceptable for our facility.
And you mentioned the artificial intelligence and all those new technologies that, are applying to every industry. Basically, everyone is interested to see how artificial intelligence will or will not help them. Are you confident, however, that European companies, from your experience, are well positioned for that? Because usually some say the real innovation is coming either from the United States or China, but Europe has a big industry, so how do you stay ahead of the curve?
No, I think when we are talking about artificial intelligence related to equipment and manufacturing, the European industry is not sitting behind the Asian or the US players. So I think we have a good advanced technology, which is, again, developing. When I'm talking about artificial intelligence, just to give some example, it's basically a self-learning machine which can recognize the different shape of scrap and segregating them in different streams. It's one of the easiest examples because otherwise talking about artificial intelligence can be a bit theoretical. And again, the European industry is moving fast on that. Let me tell you that we need, obviously, more than that. We need the support of policymakers. We are advocating as a company, for example, minimum recycled content threshold for all materials. I mean, not only packaging. We're talking also of materials which are going in the automotive industry. Mm-hmm. We like, for example, the strategy of BMW. They have announced that by, I think, 2030, they want to have 40% of the material that they are using coming from the secondary industry. This is the direction we need to take. For every material which is used, that there should be a minimum threshold in terms of recycled content. This will incentivize the whole industry to move forward in that direction.
That's interesting, just to close this chapter, because you say this comes down to policymakers. Obviously, there's a COP happening next year. We know there's a number of reports, one of them by Mario Draghi, that's being prepared on how to maintain the innovation and the Made in Europe, because the energy crisis worried a lot of people that Made in Europe was at serious risk of disappearing. Are policymakers moving as fast as the industries are, or is the lack becoming a problem?
I think they know what to do, but they see also niche of resistance which are coming from certain industry players, from certain governments, and aligning everyone which is needed in Europe to move into a certain legislation or directive. It's very difficult. But again, I believe, going back to the concept of life extension, reuse, the US has been growing much faster than Europe over the past 15 years. And I don't know if we are all realizing that. I think back in 2008, the GDP of the European countries was higher, larger than the US one. Right now, it's the opposite. And it's the opposite because the US have invested in energy, they've invested in manufacturing. It's by investing in manufacturing that Europe will grow again. Okay? And we need our policymakers to understand that and move in the right direction. I think some of them in France have seen a good inclination towards this support towards the industry. Some of them are going in this direction, some others are not. And I think we need fast decisions.
Fast. And I saw a few heads not in here. Is there anyone that wants to add anything on this point? I mean, he made it very clear there needs to be also a level of policy that's more global, but also give it a big push. But when you have operations, I wonder, at Inditex, which are totally global, and there's also this aspect of maybe different targets in different jurisdictions and so on. How do you come up with a cohesive strategy in that sense? Because it's not everywhere the same level of ambition or even deadlines.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, I think the key element is to be far, away of just sticking to the legal requirement. I think the ambition of the companies, particularly the bigger companies, has to be bigger than regulation. And I think we have the responsibility of keeping a high level, high standard of ambition that is clearly over regulation, and that at the same time supports the regulator to set that bar that at the end of the day should be leveling the playing field for all the companies.
Exactly.
But I think we have to set up our ambition above the regulation.
That's interesting because a lot of companies say do more than just what the regulation says you have to do, because then you'll be ahead when they set the targets that you already have, and then also there'll be a push that there needs to be some type of global cohesion. There's too many targets, it makes business complicated.
Yes, but at the same time, if you move faster and in advance of the regulation, you can transform, which potentially could be a risk, into a competitive advantage. I mean, preparing for a new model, the circular economy that we've been speaking about, the different challenges it poses in the different stages of our businesses. I mean, it's not only, you realize that circularity is not only about creating new business models for certain services or servitizing the economy, or even using recycling raw materials. It's about rethinking the whole business model. And it brings challenges from the very beginning at the design stage, designing for circularity in the producing phase. I mean, treating how to include the recycled raw materials that are able to keep the same qualities that our clients need. Because, I mean, if we create weaknesses on sustainability in terms of quality or price, I mean, we won't be making our task. I mean, we need to provide the best product, fully sustainable and at a good price to our customers. So if you are looking to the different stages and making at the very end our clients aware of the good impacts that moving to a circular model can bring, I mean, you realize you are affecting the whole business model, and that's the huge challenge of circularity. That's the huge challenge of circular economy. And I think we can decide either to work with a risk or work with an opportunity. And it's very much in our hands. I think we can do it. And we, as Inditex, in our opinion, we think that this is an opportunity, and we have the responsibility of doing it.
And we're reaching the end of the session, but I can't ask or finish the session without talking about the end of life cycle of the product, which is also a good way to end the session, I guess. Gwenaelle, can you explain what the end of life means for a product, and what does it entail, and also why is it important? Because perhaps we focus too much on the start, but not also what happens at the end of a cycle, which ultimately comes.
Yes, so I think it's a bit of the third pillar that I mentioned before, so use longer, so making sure that instead of having new CapEx investment for the customers, there is an opportunity to do more savings by OpEx development. And in that case, there are many of offers that we develop on that front, and it is super critical. The only thing is that we have to convince customer that this makes sense. And the first reaction is very much to invest into a new product. But I would like to give you maybe a few examples. Because across the board, when we talk end-to-end circularity, you know, 3 pillars, etc. So I would say end-to-end, what are the concrete examples that we can do? First, for example, we were working with Danone. You know, they have Evian bottle manufacturing plants in France. And well, they had the same question. End of life of the electrical equipment. And in that case, we exactly developed this offer, maintenance and repair through EcoFit. Very innovative situation. We just changed the core. We reduced the energy consumption by 34%. 34%. Without changing everything. Service agreement. So it's just to give you an example of the magnitude of impact that it can have. One example. Second example, when we look at our products, the critical element is how to make sure that we can embed, you know, raw materials that are circular, you know, raw materials that are reused. Not easy. Those filières are just starting. There is a battle to have the first ones in place. So in that case, we are using some steel, for example, for equipments, and we are discussing with ArcelorMittal. Can you do something? Well, they have built a factory in Spain, and they are doing recycled steel based on furnaces that are fully electrical, based on renewable, and the high quality of steel that are recycled. But it is starting. We need to drag this demand. And that's why, you know, when I talk about circularity, it's not only our own innovation. It's what we ask our suppliers, in that case, ArcelorMittal. We needed this recycled steel, and what we propose to our customers with this new innovative, like services contract, etc. So it's across the board, from our own innovations to other suppliers and our customers. And maybe one example on our innovation. Because I talked a little bit about the green premium, but what does it mean? So, for example, we have launched circuit breakers that are circular. We did that in the Nordics. And this is used in data centers, in big buildings, in big infrastructure. So it's used across the board. Reduction of CO2, 45%. So you see, one offer being developed and used in many cases, big impact. Another example, in the Nordics, we launched another offer, Elco Plus switches. So it's kind of switch that is using plastics, you know, that are recycled and based on the ocean. Polyamide fish nets, which is a part of the ocean. How to use that to create recycled plastic. This is another offer that we had just launched, and again, huge impact. So it's not only, I think the key element for us, it's building innovation. So working on, you know, how we can reduce the consumption of raw materials in the design of our products. How can we look at the new areas that we can drag raw materials that are fully circular based on biodiversity, you know, reusing oceans plastic, for example, and things like that. And how we can embed our suppliers and our customers. So all in all, we are dragging much more of the value chain in the journey. That's how we approached the topic.
Just briefly, before we get to the concluding remarks, you mentioned the Nordics, I think, twice already. Is there, because I'm just trying to understand why. Is it because this is a consumer that perhaps is more illustrated in a number of topics? Is it because they're relatively, well, small in comparison to other countries, but wealthy? What's the difference?
No, I would say, there was a lot of appetite first for those initiatives. Circularity, it's more and more a prerequisite from many of our customers. So it's a good way to test the water, to think ahead what can be the best product available to be ahead of the curve. So that's why we're starting new initiative in the Nordics, but basically we want to expand across Europe. It's just that the maturity of the market, because the understanding of what it means is higher level.
Just on this, just to know, how advanced would you say the Nordics are compared to the average European country? Just to think, this is what the average could look in how many years?
I wouldn't say in terms of years, and we cannot generalize because it's also based on customers. I would say we are working for multinational customers, and they are not only based in the Nordics. So I would say it's really also the influence of the governments, because governments are very much focused on those issues. But I would say naturally, when we work with a customer in the Nordics, it would expand in the rest of Europe. But what I say is that Europe is more advanced than in other geographies. And one thing that can change also is that because in Europe we have more regulation, especially with the CSRD, it's the reporting on sustainability, it will impose all the companies, more than 250 employees, to report on their footprint. Compulsory. It only happens in Europe. And therefore, companies will be benchmarked because everything will be public. And that's why, it's not only Nordics against Germany, against France or whatever. It will be across Europe. Every company, more than 250 people, will have to do that. It's the start of the benchmarking. And this is where we can position even further circular offers.
Okay, well, now we're reaching the end of the session, so it's tough, but maybe in 30 seconds each, why is the circular economy an opportunity? Where's the business opportunity if you had to pitch it as a businessman like you are?
I would say, again, for us, circularity means a core strategy and competitive advantage for Novelis. So definitely, if I need to summarize it.
Wonderful. That was right on time. Javier, why is it from your perspective?
Yes. Once again, I think circularity is double thinking the business model. I mean, rethinking, sticking to the basics and including all the circularity all over the whole business model.
Jean-Marc, where's the opportunity?
Well, it's a great opportunity to reinvent the economy, as I say. So I think it's especially, an opportunity for Europe because there is a maturity of the buyers, the consumer, the companies, maturity from government and regulator. And it's an even bigger need in Europe because we have less energy on raw material than many other parts of the world. So we have everything to create something that is very attractive for this continent. And I think it is also a growth opportunity for the business.
Wonderful. And Gwenaelle, final word, thought?
Yeah, I would say that if we want to solve climate change issues, we all think about energy transition. It will not solve the topic. We absolutely need to think about circularity as the second pillar of climate change and how we want to solve it.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time and taking all of these questions. Greatly appreciate it. And now a round of applause for our panelists here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.